5 are redundant 208.
Pop out chat. Say hello. Hello again. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. Today we're just doing a Q&A session and getting caught up. I'm still trying to get back into the swing of things and get caught up again since I had to do emergency travel last week, and we have construction going on at the house, and we've had all kinds of issues and delays. And so if you're wondering why Ted has been quiet and slow to roll out fixes, it's been a complicated month. So I'm working on fixing that too. So please bear with me while I get my life squared away, because, you know, that sometimes happens. And so this past month has been a bit tricky. I do have construction going on today, so if it gets a little noisy, we might scrub the show early, but we'll see how it goes, and we'll try to take some questions. So, Lee, what's new in SEO with you? Any new happenings?
Nah, you know, I've got some stuff developing in the background. You know, we've got some things in beta right now that we're running through to get ready for launch in probably early September. So those are good things. We have a link building tool. We've got a couple other things in the works. And mostly I'm just getting ready for Digital Unfiltered. It's going to be a fun event. I know you're looking forward to that as well.
I'm buying my tickets and hotel today for that event. So Digital Unfiltered is Craig Campbell and Chris Palmer's first SEO conference. It's going to be at Caesars Palace in Vegas. It's August 22nd to the 24th. There's a discount code where you can save on the room, save on the purchase. One of them is Cabitis50. I believe most of the speakers have a code, so if you want to support one of the speakers specifically, just reach out and ask for their code. But I highly recommend you attend it for a couple of reasons. A, the speaker lineup is amazing. B, my topic is going to be absolute fire. So I'm going to talk about putting SEO into easy mode and what places you can do that and tactics to actually get it done. And I'm probably not going to talk about this topic again because some of these things are just kind of core to my minimum viable SEO. Some of them are core to my success and in-house SEO. Some of it is core to my value to providing services to high-end agencies, especially in the areas of auditing. Some of these things are my personal best kept tricks of the trade. And so I feel that my talk alone at this conference is worth the cost of going, which makes everything else at this conference, all the other presentations, value on top of that. And
what
so
you're saying is come to see Ted, and you get Craig Campbell, you get Lee, you get Clint, you get all those people for free.
yes,
It's like you're paying for Ted, everybody else is for free.
yeah, but I try to deliver a ton of value in these things, so that there's a lot that you can get and you don't feel like you're gambling by going to Vegas. This is like the best bet in Vegas is come to hear my talk and win everything else at the conference for free. Like it's a guaranteed win. And
So
the
Clint, I was going to say, Clint, how do you feel about being a bonus speaker like I am?
I'm used to it.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody is trying to put the value in on this conference. So everybody's bringing their A game. Everybody's talks are worth the price of the ticket. And if you walk away with one or two really good nuggets that affect your business in a positive way going forward, then the trip pays for itself. The other things about events like these are the networking. So when you hang out with the speakers and other SEOs at the casino, at the bar, you don't even have to drink, you just hang out and you talk shop. Like, people talk about their testing, people talk about their problems and how they fix them. You can ask questions, you make industry contacts. You know, you get that group of people that you can get a consult with on a particularly difficult problem. You know, it's a powerful thing. Terry Power says, wait, we don't have to drink? No, that's optional. You know, I usually do because I tend to be a bit antisocial. So a couple drinks helps me open up, and then the floodgates open and all secrets are on the table. So if you've ever hung out with me at an SEO conference, you know I'm terrible with secrets. I'll tell you anything that's mine to tell. But yeah, you know, this is an amazing conference. It's digitalunfiltered.com. And the coupon code that they gave me was my last name in the word 50. So Kabitis 50. Clint has one, I believe. Lee has one. Is Lee, is yours your last name with 50?
Not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be last name. So if you like Clint better, and a lot of people do, then support Clint. Send him a couple of cups of coffee by using the Butler 50 if that's his code. What's your code, Clint?
I don't think I have one, or if I do, I don't know what it is.
Yep. So I'm just going to say my code's Kabitis 50.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
if you guess at codes, I think it's last names and the number 50. But it's a cool conference, and the other reason you want to go is it's in Vegas, and the Vegas ones tend to be a little more exciting if it's your first SEO conference. And B, it's Craig Campbell and Chris Palmer's first conference. And when people do conferences for the first time, they tend to overinvest in a lot of ways because it's gotta be big. And so oftentimes the first conference, you know, in a series of conferences is usually the over the top one. So I wouldn't want to miss it because Craig Campbell and Chris Palmer are known for being over the top on things. And so it would be really cool to see what they do with this event. And so often stories and legends come out of first conferences, and so it's kind of cool. It's an origin story, so it's a good thing. Now you don't have to go to conferences if you can't afford them. If you don't know how you're going to make money, how you're going to get your investment back out of it, if you live paycheck to paycheck, if you can't afford to do it, it's okay to not go. So, you know, conferences are a great tool, but they're for a specific point in your journey. So don't feel bad if you can't do it. But if you need an additional tax write-off this year, this is a great way to get it. This is like the best way to get a tax write-off for your consultancy. And so I recommend them. I think conferences are amazing. And I think this one has a lot of potential. And you'll have Lee, Clint, and myself. So you'll be able to talk to all three of us at the same time, and maybe have a beer, maybe not, but talk shop. And that's one of my favorite things is talking shop. All right, the other thing I want to mention is our sponsor, Magic PR. And so I just want to let you know that he's one of the 3 PR providers I use on the regular. and he has a variety of services. So if you want to know which one to go for, maybe chat with me on Skype for a couple of questions, and I can help direct you to which product you might need. But be sure to check out his services. They're pretty amazing. I know Clint's been using them for a long time, but just note that not all of the service offerings are the right thing for all SEO problems. Like, there are cases where you have a backlink quality problem, and there are cases where you have a lack of backlinks, and a lack of backlinks is not a quality problem. So you don't need the New York Times and Reuters and CNN if you've never had backlinks. And so don't think for a second that you need the highest tier product for all problems, because that's not necessarily correct. But definitely do check out his services. They are good for a number of different types of SEO situations, and we hope to go into that in more detail in future shows. So Magic PR, check them out. All right, so with that, Clint, you have anything to announce?
I do not.
Nothing to announce. How's SEO this week going? What did you talk about? Why should people?
Oh, I just did Q&A. Kind of went to Signals Lab and found a couple questions to ask. Spark everyone off, and then we were off to the races.
Nice.
There was also an unboxing that went on the show. Clint got his new system delivered during the show, and so he did an unboxing.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. You liking it so far?
Yeah, so far it's working great. It's fast. Cora is working on it. I figured out why it was crashing on the MacBook Pro.
Why? What was the end result?
It requires Rosetta to run, and that never asked me. It never asked me that on the MacBook Pro.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, that would be problematic. All right, then. Okay, let's see. We got some questions going here. In my enterprise SEO world, my colleagues often say that feels like spam. Well, here's the thing. Lots of things feel like lots of things. You need some data, you need some testing, you need some experimentation. So when people say feels like, they're doing intuition-based prediction. And they're making assumptions, and they're using intuition, and that in SEO is usually a train wreck. So what you actually want to do is test and challenge beliefs. So when people say feels like, me, myself, that says, oh, it sounds like you need a test. Let's test it out and get some data. Let's squash the feels like. And so, I get triggered by that word. What do you think, Clint? You there, Clint?
Be honest, you lost me. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about.
All right. So let me rephrase. All right. So he has colleagues that when he suggests things, they're saying, but that feels like spam, so we're going to shoot it down. How would you handle that?
I mean, honestly, that's not even it's a personal objection. Like, you came up with this idea, it's probably better than mine. Let me knock it down so I don't have to pay attention to what you're saying. I think we all have a habit of doing that to people. I'm trying to be better at it, but even today, I mean, I still did it. You know what I mean? It's oh, you have this idea, yeah, that's great, but I think we can do better, or my idea is better, or not presenting an idea and just kind of poo-pooing yours because you said it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I would take that. That's a personal personal interactions issue, and I am not the guy to be asking about personal interactions issues.
I don't know if you have a hard time there. I think you might have a lot of good input on it. And when it comes easy to people, they often don't even know why.
Yeah, true.
You know all the signals and triggers, so you have expertise.
Yeah. I'd recognize when people are basing things off their gut intuition and assumptions, and try to course correct that for experimentation and data.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Lee.
Well, the show me data is always a great first answer, but there's also one other objection that sort of sits behind that, which is, okay, so maybe Google's not catching it today, but a month from now, 3 months from now, they could take us down for it's the future boogeyman, and there is no easy answer for that, because it's a straight personal belief that if I build this one form profile link today, Google will take down the entire website when they find it.
I mean, that's a good point. That's why the white hat versus black hat, the white hats won that argument, right? Because they can go, oh, look, they're going to do an update and they're going to catch you. It may work today, it may work for a year, but eventually they're going to get you.
but then there's the black hat counter, which is, that's right, these things aren't for you, they're for me. So yes, you don't use them, leave them for me.
The margin of safety is, we've always talked about, if you're going to do something that is questionable, do it, a site away from you, some site that you can control, so that if it goes south, you can shut it down and say, oh, I don't know who did that. There's plausible deniability, and there's the ability to course correct quickly. So that's another way of handling that.
And one of the other things in his question is the enterprise SEO keyword. So he's potentially dealing with a publicly traded brand and or an aspiring publicly traded brand. And there are certain things that they have to care about the optics on.
Right.
And so your plan ought to account for any of those considerations for a large brand. So if you're going up against the brand perception with your SEO tactic, that'll probably lose. So he had a follow-up question. What is spam to you and what is spam to Google? Spam to Google is backlinks. So we keep waiting to see Google actually filter spam content, and it has not happened in like 15 years. And all the shit that was spam last year and 2 years ago and 4 years ago, it's all still in there. So spam to Google is backlinks.
We'll say I think they're trying with spam content, but they're using backlinks to do it, more so the lack of backlinks. So they'll pretty much let anything in. Their filters for content spam are crap, right? But then they go back, at the 3-month mark, if you don't have backlinks, they're going to start dropping you like a stone. So that's kind of how they're using backlinks, yes, to find bad content.
Yeah. The theory, if nobody wants to link to you, your content is shit.
Yeah.
All right. So what would be a good follow-up question to my comment to my colleagues that say it feels like spam? So I think you have a variety of approaches there. So like Lee mentioned, you can say, show me the data. That's a good one. And like Clint mentioned, well, what's a better alternative? So, in the lack of a better alternative, we should go with the best option on the table. That's another route you can go. So until you suggest something better, mine's the best idea. So,
Yeah.
and then you put them in the hot seat to suggest something better instead of just to say no. You can go above their head if you want. It's politically bad, but it works. If it's in the best interest of the business, you could also consensus build. Like I've found a lot of power just by explaining things at a common level with all the business units and sending out a video explaining the opportunity and what I need from the business to achieve that opportunity and how it lifts all boats. And so consensus building is often a way to get people to hear you out without cutting you off. And doing that in a video, I found, was very concise and effective because they have to watch the whole thing, then they comment. Whereas if you schedule a meeting in a meeting room, you're going to get to slide 2 and they're going to go, whoa, wait a second here, and interrupt you. And so the video gets around that where they try to derail you early on.
I would potentially look at an audit of all my higher ranking competitors, highlighting their spam and just bringing it to,
and
our team's attention. I'm like, look at everybody that's ranking above us. These 7 well-known sites, these are their spammy links, and they're kicking our asses. Now we don't know that they're kicking our asses because of the spammy links, but if you want to do some spammy links, you can hint at a cause and effect that may or may not be accurate.
Get comparables. So get other enterprise level websites and screenshot examples of them doing the same thing. Use Wayback Machine to find out how old those screenshot examples are. So you can say, they've had that up there for 4 years. And that's akin to getting data, but the comparables is good as well. All right, let's move on to the next question. What SEO test could I do to impress upon enterprise SEOs? What gets their interest? That's an interesting question because it sounds like you're trying to convince other SEOs. So I'm taking it you're in a group of SEOs then, and you're trying to win mind share from a particularly white hat corner of the group. Testing, just simple SEO testing is kind of your best weapon on that. When you set up a single variable test case and demonstrate something, and then you demonstrate it on a live page in the field in a safe place, don't gamble with the enterprise. So you have a single variable test, you have an in the field test on a real keyword, and you bring that data to them and they have their instincts. And you kind of get them cornered at that point. So maybe try that, perhaps. What do you?
I was going to say, Ted, in the background, you've talked about your 0 to 1, sort of the goose egg SEO model. So if every enterprise site has pages that are non-performing, so you can build spammy links or add content or do the thing to that page and not risk the enterprise or even any performance because it's not performing. And if you can do those things and get it to perform, then maybe people are more willing to expand that little test idea to other areas of the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Another thing is running the numbers. So like along the lines of what Lee was just saying, if you find out that, hey, it took me 15 minutes of work on a test page that yielded X amount of organic traffic from search to that test page, and we have, 157,000 pages, if I could get a little bit of time from a developer to do this en masse across the 150,000 pages, I think we could be looking at a benefit of X across that corpus of documents. And so when you run those numbers, you have a much stronger argument because you're talking about the potential of traffic growth and revenue growth based on a thing. So if you're in a case where you can run the numbers and explain the opportunity, sometimes the opportunity will outshine the objections. Let's see. Why is enterprise SEO so boring? It wasn't boring for me. I guess the thing is, how are you leveraging it? Like I used it as a testing platform, and every time I'd run a test, I'd learn something new, and I could go blow minds with it and get invited to conferences. I think it depends what you're doing with the opportunity. So, and I always thought it was awesome having the mountain of authority at my back. So anything, I could write a website on anything, do a site-wide footer from the authority site, and instantly get like a PageRank 5 website on any keyword I wanted. That should not be boring. That's easy street. That's kid in a candy store. That's being locked in the toy store overnight, and you have your run of all the toys. That should not be boring. That should be fun. And so, yeah, make it fun. And that's probably another thing you can do with your coworkers is, be a motivational force. Let's see. The other thing about enterprise SEO, the tricky part is if you're in a vacuum of how it's performing, then yeah, I could imagine that being boring because you never have bragging rights. And so if you're in a situation where you can never talk about how well your SEO is performing in an enterprise SEO role, you should be fearful of your job at that point. So what I recommend you do then is you set up attribution and you start figuring out organic revenue from search. And you can do that in Google Analytics. And I know it's lossy and I know it's flawed, but it gives you a number, and you can say that this month's number is better than last month's number. And if you can do percent growth or order transactions or something that's a real bragging right that SEO can impact, and you can do that attribution in GA, that'll be a game changer, and that makes you important. That gets you into the important meetings. That gets you at the executive table. But if you're just talking about, rankings all the time and nothing else, then you're not communicating to the business people. And you'll be awfully alone, and it'll be hard to make your work important to the rest of the organization. But it's on you to bridge that gap if you're an in-house. And it's on you to do consensus building to get businesses to bridge that gap if you do client SEO. All right, let's see. Even though I only have one language on the website, is it a good idea to always use hreflang? I don't. I think it's optional. I mean, it might do something somewhere. I couldn't say that it doesn't, but I can rank pages without it just fine. So I would call that totally optional. What do you think, Clint?
It's kind of one of those better safe than sorry's for me, especially if I'm doing multiple languages. I don't like doing them. Some people just do multiple languages for the sake of doing them, and you don't have customer support. You don't have any content in those languages other than the translated stuff, and I think it's weak. But if you have to have it and you can support it, then adding hreflang is just kind of one of those technical things that you do to make in case it matters.
Any thoughts, Lee?
I tend to lean. I have no data. I tend to lean more towards Clint, the better safe than sorry, but I can't swear that it does a damn thing. So.
All right, let's see. Next one, just curious. And top SEO factors, why do you think schema is 15% of all factors? I think that's just a coincidence. It's really easy to get a whole bunch of keywords in this tag, keywords in that tag, keywords in this attribute, keywords in that attribute. Now there's a lot of schema objects and those numbers are growing pretty quickly, but the amount of schema factors versus the amount of tag and attribute factors is arbitrary and doesn't mean anything. I would view it as a coincidence. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, it's just a function of, what's programmed in there and what it's detecting. It's if you programmed it to detect color, the color factors would explode as well. And that doesn't mean anything probably, unless we think that color impacts SEO.
Yeah, and so don't misunderstand me. Schema is important. It's definitely wired into search. Terry Samuels ranked a page with nothing but schema. That proves that it's wired into the ecosystem, and things that are wired into the ecosystem tend to be important. So don't neglect an entire category of signals for no reason. That's a terrible idea because we know that Google is a diversity system. You shouldn't be ignoring categories of anything. What do you think about schema, Clint?
Oh, schema sucks. Nobody should do schema.
There you go. That answer tells you a lot. All right. The problem with some enterprise organizations is that they're not really dedicated to SEO. Some VP just hires an SEO so they can check that box. That's from Charles Taylor. He's a pretty epic enterprise SEO. He deals with properties bigger than I've even dealt with. So he definitely knows what he's talking about there. And so, yeah, the thing is, how do you communicate to those VPs so they know that you're more than a check in a box? And that's on you. You have to educate the decision makers so they understand the opportunity, and you're going to need data to do that. Lee is free since when? That's from SEO Dude. Well, he's free at this conference if you agree with me that my topic is worth the cost of the event alone. So if you don't agree with me, then Lee is not free. Lee costs a lot then.
Well, unless you think that Clint's the reason why everybody's coming to the conference. In this case, I'm back to being free again. So
yeah, but we're tired of hearing that. I came to see Clint.
Yeah,
you gotta share the stage, Clint. You gotta share it.
It's the whole SEO paparazzi outside waiting for him to arrive. I mean, it's just hard.
It's a lot.
Well, Clint's pretty iconic, especially when he shows up at the conference with the black hat. Then everybody wants a photo because it's Clint with the black hat. Get a photo. You gonna wear your black hat?
Yep. This time I will be. It might be hot. I don't know how long I'll be wearing it, but I'll be wearing it.
Photo op at the conference. If you see him in a black hat, it won't last long in Vegas in the summer. So get your photo in while you can. All right. Let's see. How do I know if my backlinks are spam in a negative way? They will de-index your site. So if you get a new source of backlinks and your site vanishes from search, there's an issue with those links. It doesn't mean that they aren't usable to rank a page. It means that you need an intermediate page. You need to do tiered link building with links from that source. Then you can boost the page you actually want to rank. And so because of that, I test links. Now, I know that Clint has different opinions on that. He views that I go overboard on testing and worrying about it, but I'll let Clint speak to that a bit more. What are your thoughts, Clint?
I was looking at a Cora report when not paying attention to you.
My heart.
It's like that's a good news, bad news statement, Ted. I wasn't listening to you, but I was using Cora.
That's true. That's true. All right. So the question was, how do I know if my backlinks are spam? And I talked about you need to test them, and if they de-index your web page on testing, that means you need to use tiered link building with them in order to rank. And that I said that you have differing opinions on how much backlink testing you should be doing than I do.
Yeah, I mean, spam, the definition of spam is subjective to everybody. So what Lee says is spam versus what Ted says versus what I say are going to be three completely different things, right? So you have to kind of know your market, know the type of links that are there, and then be able to see patterns as you're going through your link profiles. And if you start seeing a whole bunch of sites, as an example, back in the day, there used to be plig sites. Every one of them damn things looked the same. And you go through a link profile that, and those websites having problems, and you start clicking through and you notice that all these plig sites are in there. Well, those are probably spam. It's safe to say no one uses plig other than link building. So you can safe to call those spam. You can look at wallpaper sites. Those are another good one. And then there's another network coming out. One of the SIA members found .pic sites, and they're using images from your websites and populated pages, and those are all spam. So as you get used to looking through link profiles, and it takes a minute, but once you get used to doing that, you'll be able to pick out pure trash fairly quickly. But I mean, for adult, that pure trash works like gold. So it's niche dependent too. So figure that out for yourself. Probably the best answer for that.
All right. Next question. Why is includes a ranking factor? And I think that's a reference to JavaScript and CSS includes. Let me know if you mean something else. We test it because it's measurable and it might impact. So the number of asynchronous includes affects page performance. And so it can be an indirect indication of something if it popped, one way or the other in a significant way. So yeah, if we can measure it and there's arguably a connection to SEO, either directly or indirectly, we want to know about it. Because we don't pretend to know what's in the algorithm. We need to just canvas enough possibilities that we can start to see a picture. And that means that a lot of things we measure are not factors. And the other thing is, even though they're not a factor today, that doesn't mean they weren't in the past, and it doesn't mean they won't be in the future. So when the world changes, how do you know? And that means you have to test a lot of things that are factors, and you have to test a lot of things that were factors, and then you have to test a lot of things that could be factors.
Or you just join SIA and let them do that for you. And you just work on the stuff that you know that works.
Yeah, and that's SEOintel.com. That's Clint's group. It is a magnificent group. And the cool thing about having a group like that is you can ask, 200 professionals, hey, this thing I'm about to do to my website, is this a good idea? And it's really great to ask those questions before you execute. So if you're not in a group, get in a group. It's a power tool in SEO. And SEOintel.com, amazing group. I've been in it for years. There are many great groups out there. Get in any one of them. But SEO Intel has a special place in my heart because they do the most testing. So they have the best library of tests, the most testing, and they've kept up with it. And they have a conference. They have SEO Rockstars that's coming up later this year. So that's also cool. All right. Let's see. Any thoughts on converting YouTube videos into podcasts in order to get them syndicated for backlinks? I mean, if that syndication works, I think that's fantastic. I personally have no objection to that. I just wonder how well the syndication works and if that's a great use of time. So can you be profitable spending your time that way, I think is the bigger question.
Yeah, are you going to get a market for it? Because you got to market those podcasts in order to get the downloads, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, yes, you can do it for backlinks if that's your sole purpose. Too easy, get a good RSS feed place like SoundCloud, hooked to something like Audello, and then syndicate to Spotify, iTunes, et cetera. I did it with SEO this week. It was okay. I mean, it wasn't, but it was a lot of effing work for very little return. So I wouldn't do it unless you have a plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the link piece is not good enough reason. You'd have to have, other things to make the juice worth the squeeze.
Yeah, because it's a lot of, you do the editing and then the uploading and then setting the, creating the thumbnails and doing the show notes and just, I mean, Jesus. AI makes it a little bit easier now, but you still got to do all that audio cleanup stuff too. So, yeah. I would just make an MP4 and upload an MP4 to SoundCloud and be done with it.
Do you guys know a good SEO joke? Sadly, a lot of things I say about SEO make people laugh, but I wouldn't necessarily call them jokes. I like to point out the hypocrisy in the SEO media a lot, and that can often be funny. But I try not to be too personal about it, and I've been doing less of it. So I tend to, I don't know. I kind of save that for my presentations at conferences because it's hard to make a room of people laugh about SEO. So I don't want to squander it either. What do you think, Lee? Any SEO jokes?
I could answer it with, I don't want to name specific publications, but I think in SIA's weekly email, I think one of their team members that puts that together always has almost like an SEO dad joke style thing on there. So
because it's so horrible, they're funny.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We can all do jokes that make a room full of people groan. But yeah, it's much harder to make a room full of people laugh. But they're both entertaining. So
a bunch of joke SEOs go to Signals Lab. You have a good time in that.
There you go.
Terry Power threw an SEO joke, and he goes, "What does Clint wear when working on casino pages? Depends."
All right,
that's a groaner.
Yeah.
Hey Ted, when's the next Cora update planned? ASAP. My life has kind of been turned upside down in the past month, and so I'm just coming out of that now. And so I know I owe updates to the community, and it's my fault it's behind. So I'm working on fixing that. Let's see. Dan says he's ready for the debauchery and shenanigans. There's not a lot of debauchery. We mainly hang out at the bar and talk shop.
Yeah. Before you get too far with the away from that Cora updates question, nobody busts Ted's balls more than me about getting updates out. Nobody. I mean, I am effing relentless about it, and he says, oh, it hurts my feelings and it makes me work slow, and I honestly don't give a shit. That said, when he publishes a beta and gives it to everybody and no one provides him any feedback, then your updates are just going to be slow. But effing deal with it, because there's only a few of us that are actually finding issues. Like Lee, he's a super nerd. He's going through all the data. I'm going in there mashing buttons and seeing how many button combinations I can do before it crashes. But if you're not using the beta and you're not providing him any feedback, then don't bitch about updates. Now, if you all start providing him the feedback and stuff, then by all means, and he doesn't do updates, and join me in my fight to keep Ted honest and updating his software. But until then, just shut up and use 7.5, because that thing's working like a charm right now.
Thank you, Clint. And I do want to get one out soon. That's my goal. So, all right. Let's see. How do you know when John Mueller is lying about SEO? Technically, I don't, because I don't know what he knows, and
his lips are moving, Ted. Ta-da.
And I don't know the inner workings. All I can do is compare what he says to what I can see happening in search. And when what he says doesn't match with what I see, then I comment on that, because I feel that deserves explanation. And far too many SEOs won't trust their own eyes. They'll trust Google over what they can actually see and measure. And I think that's a terrible mistake. So I would follow the data over the talking points, because the talking points are ambiguous and they have to maintain plausible deniability. There's a lot of half-truths and partial truths, and so it's just easier to follow the data. The data tends to be consistent and it gives you a reliable action plan, whereas the talking points, they flip-flop. They will say, don't use backlinks one week, and then they'll say backlinks are fine the next week. They flip-flop all the time. And it's because they're talking about different situations and different aspects of a thing. And, so it just makes the talking points hard to trust. Any comments on John Mueller?
Yeah, I don't think he lies. I think he just speaks from the perspective that he knows. I think we've all had this discussion before. I don't think he's privy to the search algorithm. I mean, he's given the highlights, but I think they don't tell him everything. So he's a representative for the search product. So he's at some point he's got to go, all right, my best guess or my knowledge says you should do X because of Y. And that's kind of the position that he's in. Everything he says, I take with a considerable grain of salt, but he also creates a lot of testing material, and just as much of what he says that is incorrect or not universal is also universal. So
I think that it's contextual, a lot of what he says, and because he is on the search team, and they're dealing with the ideal. We want you to make users for content. We are content for users. We want to, rank content for users. We want a good search experience, and so we're trying to do those things. But the inner workings of the, when the search team says, hey, we just killed a bunch of spam networks, it's like, hey, spam doesn't work. Well, no, that's not the case. They may have taken out some tactics, but that doesn't mean that all spam is gone. That doesn't mean that, if you utilize certain techniques, that they don't work. Google would like you to not utilize them. They may be working towards trying to minimize that impact. But it's a hard game, because every time they pivot, we pivot. So they can't always win. And I think, Ted, a lot of what came out of the John Mueller statements is kind of what Clint said, is we test that shit. If John Mueller says anchor text means nothing algorithmically, and we go out and we test it, and we can demonstrate that it is in fact a ranking factor, then we go with that. So
yeah, but it's also often nuanced. Like somebody will say, the quality raters, they'll mention it or something, and then it's like, well, now that factor has nothing to do with the quality raters, so he can the factor, saying it's not important, but in the context of the quality raters, and people will see factor not important, and they won't realize, well, obviously it has nothing to do with the quality raters. And so you kind of have to read the question and the reply with John Mueller very carefully, because a lot of his answers you can kind of throw out because of those nuances. And yeah, don't trust the headlines, as Clint likes to point out. You have to read the whole article. The headlines are always misleading.
Clickbait is real, my friends.
All right.
It works. It gets us to click, go, what the hell are they talking about? Then we click and read the article and go, that headline was wrong.
Yeah. I find that the headlines are incorrect about as often as the talking points coming out of Google are incorrect. So they have kind of, 50% of 50% gets you to an actual true statement. Let's see. What if you have a successful test site or sites? What happens after the test? Well, usually the test sites themselves are throwaway. So after I've learned all I can learn from a page, sometimes I'll leave them up if I feel like the answer could change down the road and it becomes a canary in the coal mine that I periodically will go back and check. Other times I just throw them away. We learned what we're going to learn. I'm not going to maintain. And I don't want people finding them, and I don't want a massive footprint of test pages lying around causing, some sort of a quality problem or something. Because test pages, by definition, tend to be very low quality, so you probably don't want millions of them. The best thing you can do is you test somewhere small and insignificant, and when you find profound wins, you apply those profound wins in important places. And what the rest of the world and the rest of your business doesn't see is your profound losses and your fails and your inconclusives. Those all get quietly swept under a carpet and put over here. So then every time you talk publicly or to the business, and everything you recommend to the business has huge smashing success, then you have the Midas touch. And so when you test in that way, you will climb the corporate ladder, or you can, very, very quickly. But you need what we like to refer to as a safe place to fail. And so if you're always backed in a corner on things and you don't have a safe place to fail, and your next mistake gets you fired, you are going to master your craft very, very slowly. And you're probably going to do very timid SEO that doesn't get big results. And so you need a safe place to fail. You should talk about it. You should, what's the part of the website? What's the part of the business where I can try things out? And then we can port those victories everywhere. And so, you need that. And Clint has suggested in the past, make your own site, make your agency site be the test site, just set something up. Do that. There's a lot of ways to do it, but once you learn something in the test, you need to test it in the field. You need to see if it actually moves the needle, because not all things that work are worth doing. And so you can get a test that, yes, this is absolutely a factor, but the factor might be so weak and insignificant that it's not worth doing on the regular. What do you think, Clint?
Single variables for is it or is it not a factor? Does it or does it not work? And then in the wild, for how well does it work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's see. What are some factors that move the needle that are very difficult to catch by other tools that are not Cora? Well, I can tell you the most important one. 99% of the industry has no idea what the strongest category of SEO factors is. And it's been this way for over 2 years. It's been chart topper for over 2 years. And we think that it goes back even before that. It's just that we discovered it 2 years ago, and we've been measuring it and quantifying it ever since. And that's factor diversity. It's just pegged at the top of the correlations for factors. And almost no SEOs know about it because almost no tools are capable of measuring it. So you have to have a critical mass of factors measured to be able to even study it. And so it's a very hard factor to wrap your hands around. And the reason we think it is a chart topper is we believe that Google has algorithms that actively punish pages that have a lack of signal diversity. And so we've been teaching for at least 2 years now that we want you to go wide and different ranking signals before you ever go deep in any one signal. And so a lot of our philosophies differ from what you'll find in Signals Lab and other SEO communities, because we have seen these behaviors on how web pages get stuck. So that thing where you're tuning a page and the rankings go up a little bit, and you tune it a little more and it goes up a little more, and then you tune it again and it doesn't work, and you tune it 50 other times and it never moves again. That phenomenon where SEO is working and then it no longer works the way it did anymore. That's the thing we're talking about. And it's the most common problem in SEO. And it's so common that your customers come in the door telling you about it and you pretend not to hear it. How many times have you heard this? Yeah, we had an SEO guy. It was going great for a while. Then it all stopped working and we had to let him go. And now we're here talking to you. It is literally the most common problem in SEO. And it's probably the most common reason why you get fired or lose clients. And so what that is, we think, is that MC4 algorithm. And that algorithm is based on factor diversity, signal diversity. So if you've only had a small number of tactics and your tactics stop working after a while, then you're probably triggering this algorithm. What do you think, Clint?
Yeah, I think I have to agree. You can get a lot of the information from a lot of those other tools. The two biggest things is depth of information and then presentation of information. Nobody matches depth. And then Surfer and Pop, they both try to deal with the UI aspect of it, but they don't get anywhere close to in depth. Surfer tries, but none of that stuff's sorted, so it's kind of useless. So I would go depth and diversity is probably where I'm at.
What do you think, Lee?
Well, let me just ask, how many factors does Cora measure?
About 100,000.
All right, so let's do standard. How many appear in most websites? You know, the sort of the base.
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
On a given keyword, you might find 1 to 4,000 factors.
Okay. So if you look at all the other tools out there, and say, well, this one measures, 10, this one measures 20, this one measures however many, you add all those up and you don't even come close to a drop in the bucket to what Cora pulls. So your ability to identify things that all the other tools miss is just so freaking easy. It's not even, I'll just go compare the number of factors measured across all the tools, add up all the tools together, and compare it to Cora, and they still lose. So
you can see that whole list of factors at topseofactors.com. I publish most of it. I haven't published the Bing stuff, and I haven't published the local stuff yet. But that's on the horizon after Cora gets an update, maybe, and Cora Lite. So there's more to come there on that side too. All right, let's see. When a store has multiple countries, does having the same blog and different subdomain subfolders appear like syndication or hreflang solve it? I mean, it can solve parts of that, but you can still, depending upon what parts of your keyword space translate into actual different words, because you'll find that oftentimes, there will be certain terms that will be the same in many languages, and then in that scenario, you could be creating cannibalization issues. But yeah, if you're using multiple different languages, so there's saying definitely different countries. I think the only time I would want to use hreflang is if there's actually different languages. If it's all English and you're talking Canada, UK, Australia, United States, I don't know that I would break those out into hreflang variations, just because the British spell the word color differently. I think one language could suffice for all of those. But it's up to you, I guess. It seems overkill. What do you think, Lee? Do you break out English Canada from English US?
I have no tested data on that. So I don't say no comment like I know something, but it's like no comment like I have no data whatsoever. So
yeah, I think there are so few websites that break out English Canada from English US. I find it difficult that Google would intentionally make that a powerful factor of some sort. The way that it could be beneficial is it makes you different from their web spam training set. And we have seen that any difference from web spam you can have kind of behaves like a weak positive factor. So if you see easy opportunities to be different from web spam, that can be a positive thing.
I think what a good way to test it is to buy yourself a Canadian domain and try to rank that in the US without using hreflang. And I can tell you right now that it's hard as fuck. I had a client that wanted to do it, and we just eventually gave up. So if you have it, you're gonna have to do it in the reverse, because if you do the .com, to try to rank it in Canada, typically they rank pretty well in Canada. But if you go in the other way around, then the hreflang is actually helpful. So it's a good test for sure. I don't know how practical or useful it would be in the real world, unless you already have a busted site you need to expand out.
Here's an interesting one. Can I use Google Calendar to help my local business website get in the 3-pack? You know, I've never tried to use Google Calendar in that kind of way. I'm not even sure how I would connect those dots. Any thoughts on that?
The Gary and Patrick, the old dudes over at Ranking Factory, they have some course on it.
And software, I think, that does that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a software, but they do have a course for sure. And then they have a software that you can manipulate, but the actual process is a course that they're selling. If you can get through that, listen to those guys teach.
Yeah, I don't know the tactics, so I can't really speak on it. So it piqued my curiosity though, because those are two things I haven't tried.
Yeah, they're using events. Everything in his question is leading to that he's seen some version of that training, but you can link with calendars. You can rank with calendars. Don't have any test on maps that says you can do it with maps, but if you have the right URLs and combine that with some of Brock Misner's URL manipulation stuff, I mean, that in theory it should work fine. But get yourself a throwaway calendar or a throwaway account to build with those calendars, because they make it's an annoying mess when you're doing it right, like how they teach it.
All right. So if a new website with a very weak backlink profile, so going from little to no backlinks to some, disappears from Google after press release backlinks are acquired, would you continue with the same domain or get a new domain and move the content there? Well, I would want to know what was in the press release. Was it on topic or was it kind of loosey-goosey? Because if it was loosey-goosey, you probably changed the keyword that you're ranking for, and you just don't know what the new keyword is. So go to Search Console and look at the queries data and see what you're getting search impressions for. And is that the keyword you're targeting or something else? Because you might have negative SEO'd your website if you didn't get the relevancy of the press release correct for the keyword you're trying to rank the page for. Next, these things can trip Google dance. And so you might just need to wait. So you might have fallen out while Google reprocesses because you said you had very little of a factor, and then you went to a big influx on a page that didn't have it. Sometimes that takes a couple weeks. So I would still wait and see. And I like to tell people that if you touch off page, it takes a month. You add a month to the project, you can't call it for a month. So if it hasn't been a month, then you can't really call it yet. So yeah, I'd give it time, because sometimes off page needs time, because it takes, a week, sometimes more, to get the press release to go out even. And then Google has to crawl the internet, find those links, and they have to recalculate page rank and apply it to your page. And that's not a near real-time thing. I mean, you can tweak on page and rank faster in 24 to 48 hours. But when you tweak off page, it's going to take a month. What do you think, Clint?
Reading the question I don't think we have enough information. Like, if a weak backlink or a weak domain gets PR backlinks and it's disappeared, my instinct tells me that the PR backlink had exact match anchors and it just dropped the page out. Because you can definitely go overboard with PRs and exact match anchors, especially if you don't have any other anchor diversity whatsoever, which is where the weak backlink profile comes in. So it sounds to me like that PR, I would run like 2 more PRs and get brand anchors to your domain and see if your domain comes back.
That's a great suggestion. Diversifying the backlink profile is the third option.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't know on the press release, they might have used exact match 3 times or 5 times on the same press release. It's like there's too many things we don't know.
Yeah, they don't have any other backlinks, or it's really weak backlinks. And if they're using exact match, they're probably using keyword anchors and not using brand and not using URL at all. So there's no diversity in your anchor text, which, you could just send a Google. It's a brand new website with keywords for anchors. I mean, to me, that sounds like a real easy filter. Oh, this is an SEO website, not a real brand.
Yeah. Then you also have the, what press release network was it put on, because not all of those are the same. What do the pages look like? It could just be coincidental. The site was on its way out and you threw a press release. There's too much we don't know to be able to answer that one.
All right, let's see. One last comment from Charles Taylor. Interesting note about self-referring hreflang. It seems to act like a super canonical. So that's interesting that if you need a power tool in the canonical aspect of things, you can manipulate hreflang to that effect. I haven't played with that, but that's an interesting thing to hear about. So that's an interesting tidbit. All right. So with that, just to remind everyone, digitalunfiltered.com, Cabitis 50 if you want the discount. It's going to be a fun conference. And if you're looking for an SEO group, there's SEOintel.com. Be sure to check that out. If you're looking for more content to consume, be sure to check out SEO This Week, which is Clint's show. And if you are looking for next level advanced SEO training that tends to be Cora centric, then reach out to Lee and testedseotraining.com. And thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.